am Daniel Leakes, and welcome to Book 101. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 14 years. And today, I have my special guest. She is the author of several books, no other than Miss Sapha Burnell.
Hello, hello, hi, everybody. Happy autumn to those of us in the Northern Hemisphere. It's sweater weather where I am, and I'm very excited to sit down with a cup of tea and read a few books, hopefully including my own for those of you out there.
Yes, welcome back, Miss Burnell. And again, as usual, can you please introduce yourself?
Absolutely. My name is Sapha Burnell. I am the cyberpunk and mythpunk author of several books, including The Judge of Mystic Saga and The Lieben Cycle. I am on Twitch twice a week teaching writers and just kind of being part of that amazing, beautiful writers scene on Twitch. And I'm on social media everywhere at Usurper Kings, which was the name of my first publication, my poetry collection. I like to focus on fiction where for every valley I bring you to, for every moment of catharsis, I'm going to bring you to the heights at the end. So you definitely know that for every dark and shadowy moment, there's going to be a moment of joy.
Definitely. So, Miss Burnell, let's do the recap of all the books that we talk about, especially The Judge
Woohoo.
of Mystic Saga.
All right. So we started off our incredibly fabulous podcast sessions with Char and Ash. And for those of you who might be listening to this as the first one that you're listening to, please do go back, find all of those other podcasts. They are available everywhere that you get podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, and Spotify is where I get mine. And also, I've listed them all on my website, saphaburnell.com, for easy listening. Just click on them and take a listen. We've got Char and Ash, Judge of Mystic Saga, book number 1. The Book of Knowledge is gone, and someone is trying to kill the gods. The mystic realms keep a tenuous peace after centuries of war. Forged into the realm's only judge, demigod Caleb Malthison is both peacemaker and executioner of the mystic truce. When Caleb is called to the charred remains of a scorched grove outside Dover, rumors reignite tensions as Ares warns of war's whispers. High Queen Celica is hiding something in the roots and petals of her fey courts, and it smells of char and ash. Char and Ash is an emotional and captivating myth punk supernatural fantasy and the first novel in the Judge of Mystics saga. I love Char and Ash. It is one of my babies. I love the characters that I have in it. You know, the characters like Caleb and Tuya, also characters like Ares, the former Olympian in my world, and other such characters like Finnegan and Celica of the Fae. It is tense. It has lots of, kind of pugilistic moments, while at the same time, it's also got that tender emotion of the relationship between Caleb and Tuya. And it ends in an incredibly explosive ending, which takes us to book 2, Son of Abel. And in Son of Abel, this takes place a few hours after the events of Char and Ash. It starts out with the fated and horrible words of Caleb Malthison, "I want out." The entire cosmos hiccups around Finnegan, the Fae. Mystic Judge Caleb Malthison desperately clings to the journals of a 7th century Catholic cardinal, obsessed with a magical tattoo that threatens to crumble the mystic realms to wrath and war, a place they know and fear too well. Spiraling with only his scheming ex Delilah to quote-unquote help, Caleb searches for the elusive way out of the truce as he descends through the essence of grief into layers of hell on earth. Son of Abel is a cathartic myth-punk and god-punk supernatural fantasy, and the second novel in the Judge of Mystics saga. And then we talked Book of Revels, which is Judge of Mystics saga number 3.
Yes.
So that one was a lot of fun to talk about. So with Book of Rebels, because this is a quartet, really. The saga was meant to be a quartet. Son of Abel was the lowest point for Caleb. That was the grief point. That was the anger point. That was the point where his life was at its lowest. And so by the time we get to Book of Revels, we're starting to find the way out. We're starting to find the healing. So, please, everybody, when you're reading the books, make sure you don't stop at Son of Abel. Keep going. Go through Book of Revels too, and you will see that everything starts to be a little bit more okay. And things start to be on the mend. And enemies that we saw in Char and Ash start getting their comeuppance. It really all starts kind of coming together in Book of Revels, which starts off with, "You're the judge, the oh holy banhammer. Why did she send you?" When Delilah does one last con on Caleb and coerces him into picking her daughter up from a Swiss boarding school, he thinks it's a chance to clear the air between exes and take a few hours of mundane calm. Enter Lilith, the teal-headed teacher-punching delinquent who got expelled. 3 seconds was all it took for Caleb to realize the mystic marks on Lilith's soul and thrust them both into a journey to confront the woman who stole Lilith's true name. Oh, and keep the truce from crumbling. Oh, and stop his now raging uncle from taking over the human world. Oh, and figure out this emergency parenting thing. It's high time Stana from Charnash got her due. Oh, yes. And exciting thing, here, Mr. Lucas, Book of Revels comes out next week.
Oh my goodness, that's awesome.
Yeah, I think that, we were comparing some of my work to, Neil Gaiman, Madeline Miller, to, the consummate Edith. I think also another comparison that could be made would be, like Madeline L'Engle as well,
Wow.
William Gibson. So I take a lot of reference from people like that. And I think it makes it fun.
Definitely, Miss Burnell. So, which book of yours we gonna talk about today?
We're talking about Neon Lieben. We've been going through either my poetry or my myth punk, myth punk being this sort of rebellious, subversive take on folklore and mythology using a lot of postmodern techniques. We're going to the place where my heart forever lies, and that is cyberpunk.
Okay. Neon Lieben will be your debut novel.
Yes, this was published in 2021, and it was my debut novel. I had written shorter things before, like the original Son of Abel was serialized fiction that ended up being a short story. It was not even really novella length. So Neon Lieben was the big boy. This was my first novel. It took 8 years to produce. Because I originally went to my editor with a completely different novel in the series, a novel that's coming in a few years called Hedonism Wholesale Inc. And my editor was like, "Oh no, I love it! Like I really do, I love it. It's just you need to tell the first story first."
Yes,
Like,
definitely.
no!
Tell the story first. So, why Lieben
Yeah.
Cycle Book 1? Is this a series, a quartet, or a trilogy?
So the original storyline of the Lieben cycle is going to be a trilogy. In total, there's going to be 3 separate trilogies within this universe. So by the end of it, there's going to be 9 books.
Oh, wow.
That's what we kind of, scheduled. That's what I have contracted to work on. And it starts with Neon Lieben, and Neon Lieben starts the original Lieben cycle. And it was published, as I said, in 2021. And then the sequel to Neon Lieben, Emptiness at the Center, is due out next year.
Wow.
And autumn in 2024. So it's going to be a lot of fun. These are, they're very intriguing additions to cyberpunk. You think cyberpunk, you think Philip K. Dick, William Gibson, you think of Cyberpunk 2077, you think of all of these different things, Ghost in the Shell, all of these sort of gritty, one hand film noir, one hand cybernetic, one hand, stratified culture, the whole thing. There is a rebellion against some form of corporate overlord. That is the essence of cyberpunk. And that's what I go into in Neon Lieben. It crosses into biopunk territory just a little bit because of the, genetically modified super soldiers that I have in the novel. Uh, but it is a firm work of cyberpunk. And yet, the feedback I was getting from reviewers were things like Artisan Books. They put out a review and said, I never thought a work of science fiction could be so beautiful.
So, Miss Burnell, what behind the title of Neon Lieben?
So, Lieben is the main character. Let me say it this way. AI meets gene splicers when the Idlis, a group of anarchists, and the Conglom, a giant corporation, fight to define Lieben and thus the world. Lieben is a artificially intelligent android, the first truly sapient artificial intelligence in world history. And then 7 decades later, Adarastos sets the human race against its next stage in evolution. If he can survive long enough to rescue his fellows and Max, will Lieben help him or hinder? And so it takes place in two storylines in two different time periods. In 2085, where Dr. Karnak and Baiko create the android Lieben in the first place and realize that she's in danger of becoming mother of the conglomerate's artificial slave race. And then, with the chairman's assassin on their tail, they steal the secrets to Lieben's artificial intelligence and run to the Idlis, anti-label anarchists who believe Lieben is the key to free the world from corporate control. And then in 2155, where we start the novel, because I do a lot of nonlinear storytelling in it, accidentally awakened gene-spliced biomachine Adarastos wakes to shore in Iqaluit, BC, to the hum of the mutter machine Lieben's hymn electric. So I play with that idea of seeing the origins of this artificial intelligence, this AI, and then fast forwarding to 70 years later, and what's happened since she woke up. And I play with that storyline going back and forth in this sort of narrative parallel the entire way through the novel. And it was important to start it off with Lieben because what Lieben is and what she does ends up completely changing the history of the universe. And so I had to start off at a place where she was just beginning, where she first opens her eyes, where she first, makes certain choices, what happens to the people around her and what do the people around her make of her? Some people think that she's a tool to be used, other people think that she's a danger to be destroyed, and yet other people think that she's a person. And so, like the character of Demian Anastas, which appears in the Lieben cycle in Neon Lieben, and in Future's Lens with the story Cagewire, he looks at Lieben and goes, I don't care if you're artificial, you're a person. And so he treats her like he would treat any other person, where everybody else around him is treating her like some form of machine. And so being able to play with that sense of what is sapience, what is artificial sapience, what is natural sapience, how do you prove it? What does that mean? What does it mean to have a more general AI? Like, we have a lot of narrow AIs right now. We have a lot of limited artificial intelligence, everything from our Siri or, our Alexa devices, different kinds of, programs online and different learning machines and algorithms. And we've got so many different things that are going on right now, not to even mention AI art. Like, I'm not even going to go there right now. I'm backing away. Although it was hilarious. I got a comment on my website the other day. Somebody tore me a new one saying, how dare you use AI art? You're a hack, you're all this. And I was like, okay. So the cover art that they were talking about was the Neon Lieben cover art from 2021, from way before there was AI art prevalent.
It's original, people, from Miss
Yeah.
Sapha Burnell.
It's original. It's clearly photo manipulations. It's clearly
Yes.
just a bunch of photos.
That's
Uh,
that's how futuristic of Miss Sapha
yeah.
Burnell writing. But before we go on, Miss Burnell, I want to shout out to the people listening in Puerto Rico. Muchas gracias. Puerto Rico for listening for this podcast. In San Juan, I got 69% audience share. Carolina, 21%. And Bayamon at 10%. Thank you, Puerto Rico. As a muchas gracias todos for supporting this podcast, because this podcast is created to empower writers all over the world like futuristic Miss Sapha Burnell.
That's me.
Right.
And thank you, Puerto Rico. Muchas
Well,
gracias.
yes. So, Miss Burnell, let's talk about AI because this is a big issue right now. Most
Yes.
especially for the writers. What is your piece about artificial intelligence?
So if you want more information about my philosophy on artificial intelligence, you can look at my Medium. I've written several articles around the world, including for the Codex magazine, about artificial intelligence and about the nature of artificial sapiens. So it is something that I do consider myself well researched. For me personally, I think we need to separate the different kinds of AI. Like I said, there's an article that I did a couple years ago, basically back in 2021, where I was talking about the nature of AI and what kind of power that it wields. And I gave the example of Sybil. It's a fictional AI. Sybil, you show Sybil a picture, it can instantly tell you what dog breed, even if it's a mutt, what dog breeds are in a dog. You show them video, you show it photos, it'll instantly tell you to an incredible degree of accuracy what kind of dog that is. But the second you ask Sybil to how to tie a shoe, there is so much information that's outside its purview, it's useless. You need to define shoe, foot, tie, knotwork, thread. You need to define, human walking. You need to define what, bones go in a foot. You need to define how to put a shoe on, how a shoe is made. All of those things are so outside its purview, it's useless. So I think when we look at AI, we have to see what the underlying use it is meant to fulfill is. And we have to remember that AI is not yet Pinocchio. AI is a marionette with a bunch of strings. You can't cut its strings and it still walk around. You need to use the information that the scientists and the people working on that AI have given it, that initial spark. And although AI, now we do have some technology where AI is beginning to write its own algorithms, it's beginning to write its own Bozeman machines and its own kind of self-learning algorithms, we are still the initial data set. And I think what we need to do, especially with, creativity in the arts and what's going to happen with AI, we need to make sure that the ethics behind our reasoning for creating something are sound. Ethics in technology is actually a gigantic deal, even though a lot of people can say, well, it's science, science is neither good or bad. Science is just science. Is it? Is it just science? I don't know. Like you look at some of the early AI that we have been using, and you have horror stories from the AI that Amazon created to go through different CVs and resumes for positions and would just automatically nix every female that it saw because in its analytical mind, it went, oh, women, pregnancy, mat leave, less, less of an employee, get rid of it. And they didn't catch it necessarily right away. All of a sudden it's like, oh wow, all of these really good candidates, like this AI did a really good job. Has anyone considered that there are no women in those candidates? The same thing with a lot of right, like with a lot of early sort of facial recognition software where different, skin tones would come out better or worse. And I could go and there's a lot of things about that, but the initial data set that we give is so important. When I look at something like AI, I look at a tool. Would it be useful for me as an author to have my own little AI that could go through my work and show me everywhere I use too many of the same word? Of course it would. Would it be easier for me if I had an AI which showed me where my redundancies are? Where, I'm repeating something too much or where my grammar is off. That sort of tool, I'm like, yeah, of course that would be more effective. The second you program a tool like that with material that somebody did not voluntarily give, that's where the problem lies. It's not in the effectiveness of the tool. The tool is just a tool. I remember back, when Photoshop started becoming a thing, and I was doing a lot of graphic art and I was doing a lot of design and things like that. All of a sudden, people were able to draw on a computer, and it was the death of comic book art. It was the death of design. It was the death of art. I remember being in those days where people were like, "Oh my gosh, you can't do that on a computer. You're going to lose some incredible thing with just, you and a piece of paper." And it's like, well, we still use paper. Those of us, who design and draw, we might
Yes.
use other tools as well, but it didn't necessarily become as, as, apocalyptic as all that. But I guess for me, my big stand on AI is not just creating technologies for creation's sake, but understanding the underlying reasons for why that technology is being created and understanding how it could be used both by the ethical and the unethical.
So, do you think artificial intelligence is a good invention for humanity?
I was actually tangentially involved with a pilot project which used limited AI across continents for surgeons in Montreal and in Toronto to teach neurosurgical techniques in West Africa using AI and robot. And that pilot project that was done through the Montreal Neurological Institute, it saved lives. It has saved incredible amounts of lives. It made proper and incredible education available to people who could never just get on a plane and come over and spend a few months learning this stuff, but they were able to be educated where they were. And I think between the surgical AI, the robots that we're getting in the medical field, we've got, and I say surgical, what I really mean is an anesthetist bots and things like that are able to kind of watch stats and see what it needs to do. And you still need an anesthetist sitting there to make sure that it's correct. But thinking of how much easier things like surgery could be, thinking about, you know, the way that we could use I think used correctly, it is a wonderful and fantastic thing that we should not be afraid of. But we should always be cautious about the limits and how it's used. And that's what I really did in Neon Lieben. It was this conversation that I had 2 years too early. I think really what happened because I discussed this in the book and in the philosophy behind what people find and how there will always be this amount of people that want to do things bespoke, that want to do things for themselves, that don't want to have AI or computer assistance. And that's awesome. Great, go for it. But there will also be people who go, wait a minute, you're telling me that I could get my kid educated in such a way where it evens the playing field. And I don't have to
Okay.
pay for it. I don't have to do this. This can happen.
Miss Burnell, how did you craft that Neon Living?
Whew. With a lot of gray hairs coming into my head. I focused on the people. For me, the easiest way to teach about quantum computing and artificial intelligence and to go through sort of the hard sci-fi, because in my opinion, the Lieben cycle is and will continue being closer to hard science fiction. So I'm taking my time to make sure that my science is as accurate as possible, which is the reason why it took 8 years to get Neon Lieben out, because the science that I used 10 years ago when I was crafting the original manuscript, all of a sudden, what felt like such a futuristic thing was like, oh, we have that now. Oh, well, this is supposed to be 60 years in the future, so I'd better, change my science. Um, I focus. I feel like having people like the characters of Max and Adarastos and Demian and Baiko, having those people interact with the technology and with the philosophy behind it and with the necessity for different things is the best way to kind of bring understanding, but also bring the real issues out to the fore. The
Ye-
real
yeah.
issues of developing things for the good of, and for the good of everybody, not just a selective group of people, you know? But
Yes, and according to C. Bearfield, high action, high suspense. Miss Burnell, what are the elements that you put in the story that make this high suspense?
Okay, so the first few chapters start with Adarastos. Like the first, absolutely, chapter one starts with Adarastos in 2155 walking to shore in Akulit, British Columbia, which is just this little tiny spit of land at the end of Vancouver Island in British Columbia. For those of you who are like, oh, shout out to Akulit, good surfing, yeah. Um, and Max Allard, a very wide eyed ingenue lieutenant, being told to go get him and bring him back. Go get this 8 foot tall super soldier that's never seen humanity before and just bring him back. Bring him back to the ship. And so instantly there is this tension on whether or not Max will be able to bring Adarastos back to his prison in the first place. What's going to happen with that? What happens with Adarastos, this 8 foot tall super soldier, walking through a hospital, and what he does when he encounters humanity at the first time. And this is all in chapter one, so it's not a huge spoiler, but the first thing that Adarastos does is heal the people he sees. And so you have this monstrous beast, and the first thing he's doing is healing the sick. And then all of a sudden it cuts to Dr. Karnak and Baiko creating Lieben. Something goes wrong very early on. Lieben is turned on faster than she should have been. And now everyone's scrambling. What do? They can't, like, because of the quantum nature of the device, the second that you kind of turn it off again, you're never going to get back that existent piece of magic that started in the first place, that initial chaotic burst. And so Baiko and Karnak basically create a theft, and they steal not only Lieben, but they do a fire sale of all the research. And then that makes the chairman of the Conglom put his assassin Terra on Baiko to get all of that back, to get Lieben back. And so the entire novel, Baiko is running away from Terra, who is attempting to not only eviscerate her, but steal all that research so that the conglomerate can create many, many more of Lieben than the initial prototype. And this is interplayed with more of what's going on in 2155 with the parallel of the super soldiers like Adarastos trying to basically emancipate themselves from their situation, until finally by the end of the book there is a gigantic spoiler where you find out it's basically the same story. It's all interconnected in a way that's really intimate. And so there's lots of action. There's, there's super soldiers going crazy in battle. There is Terra trying to, to run through the streets and get Baiko. There is, Demian and Baiko and several others who finally come together in a bunch of tunnels underneath New London. And there's just a lot of action and drama, a lot of people falling in love, falling out of love. There is that central focus of Lieben for characters that have never met her, for characters that have never seen Lieben before. And then when they finally do see Lieben and find out that she is not that thing that they thought in their heads, she is something completely different. And what do you do now? You spent the last 8 years trying to find this artificial intelligence, and finally you find her, and she's not what you expected. So what do you do? And so there's a lot of drama, there's a lot of combat, there's a lot of moments too that are very emotional and staid and quiet, because I do love my emotion forward characters. I do the same thing that I've done in the Judge of Mystic Saga, where, I'll take people into the Shadowlands and then I'll also bring them to the sun. I will say, though, Neon Lieben did end, and this is unfortunate in a way. Neon Lieben ended on a gigantic cliffhanger. So I'm like, I better get working on
Yes.
Emptiness at the Center, because, oh my goodness, people are not going to want to wait.
That'd be awesome and interesting, Miss Burnell. But before we go on, I'm inviting you to listen to my other podcast, Food 101, our third season with Chef Alessandro, one of the best executive chef in one of the best restaurants in downtown Toronto. And listen to our latest episode. We talk about Osso Buco Milanese, one of the trademark of Italian cuisine. Plus one more, our books are out. Not only one, but 7 volumes, people. Food 101, Volume 1, Basics until to 7 is all about how to create a delicious food. Available on Amazon and leading online bookstores worldwide. So, Miss Burnell Neon Lieben, what is the best highlight?
Ooh, I think the best highlight uh, is, honestly, I'm going to go back to chapter one. Chapter
Okay.
one, A World of the Mater Machines Design. That initial burst of Adarastos walking out of the sea and going to see humanity for the first time. And then we also get to see in that same chapter, we get to see Max Allard for the first time. And Max Allard is this wide-eyed youth just promoted to lieutenant. He's just a plumber, man. He's just like the guy that like fixes stuff on the ship. Why are you sending me? Well, because you're harmless. Wait, yeah, okay, thanks, I guess. You know, and Max is such a good foil for Adarastos. He's this bright and wide-eyed and just sort of like ultimately young human male that seeing him interact with Adarastos, it's luscious. I love it. I think my other highlight of Neon Lieben would be further along when we get underneath the tea shop in London, and there's a series of white tunnels that I had in my mind of these sort of undulating, almost non Newtonian materials that would kind of swell around people so that they could go to different cubicles, to different spheres, to different kind of like secret meeting rooms and all these different kinds of things. But this labyrinth of white tunnels constantly changes and morphs because it's only the size that it needs to be for the people inside it. And we finally have that moment where within this cocoon where Baiko finally sees Lieben again. She's finally back. This is the thing she's been doing for 8 years, trying to find Lieben. She gets to Lieben. Lieben is with Demian. And then all of a sudden, Terra and her forces find them. And there is a firefight inside that series of white tunnels, which is incredibly impactful for the rest of the entire series. And I just love the optics in my head. I see it like a filmmaker. Like I'm like, okay, here we go. This is how I would shoot that. And I am somebody who did film and actually has a film school degree. So I'm seeing it as a producer and as a director. I'm going, I need to storyboard this. But at the same time, it's just such a powerful, mutable place for such high emotions and for the incredibly changing and metamorphic events that take place once Terra finally gets to Baiko and Lieben. It is beautiful. It is amazing. It is horrific. It has everything from, killer robots to a love story where, somebody gets shot. I love it. I'm very excited about it. I'm almost clapping my hands. I have to make sure that I don't in front of my microphone. But
So, Miss Bernal, can you read some of this paragraph of chapter 1?
absolutely. This
Thank
is
you.
from the initial paragraph. A World of the Mutter Machines Design, 2155. Bare feet padded along the gray shore of Iqaluit, British Columbia. All but the bravest locals were long indoors as raucous waves crashed across the reef. The tang of salt water made the monolith spit on the grass. He sniffed the air, feet pressed against the earth as if waiting for it to pitch, and yaw. The disequilibrium of life on the sea sloshed at wrung ears. No wave or bend came to the solid ground, nor did he see the dim electric signs wobble in the storm. Storm warning. Please remain indoors. Call for emergency. Storm warning. The script played in sigils Adarastos lived in ignorance of. No context for surf shops, boba tea, and coffee cafes. Neither the few vehicles on the street tethered to blue glowing stands with battery icons. Haven. Above all signs and ubiquitous scripts, a crown of fluctuant purple and pink neon light. The only recognizable thing in Adarastos's mind was the crown. The lights dimmed and flickered. Not even the Mater machine, that android Queen Lieben, could keep the storm from battering the Pacific coast. Adrastos's body left a trail of seawater back to the Carolina Channel. Serene android neo nurses bustled between patients and visitors. The neons remained immune to the tumult of humanity's raised voices and emotional conquests between hospital beds. Chitter chat of the storm, would it close down the pass on Highway 4? Was as ignored as the wind. Vibrational whirs convalesced on his skin. From the vibration alone and the lack of petrol fumes, Adrastos knew the auxiliary was a solar and wind powered battery backup generator. Precisely how he knew such confundities existed was as questionable as the symbols on the signs. Or the wind continued, this place would remain attached to the hymn electric.
Wow. Interesting in the beautiful British Columbia as in chapter 1. Miss Burnell, can you please invite our listeners to buy all your books?
Dear listeners, please, if you like cyberpunk, if you like mythpunk, if you like characters that are alive and emotional and deep, please purchase my books. You can find them everywhere that books are sold. Just search Sapha Burnell, that is SAPHABURNELL, or go to my website, saphaburnell.com, for more information on where to purchase all my books. They are literally everywhere from Amazon to Barnes and Nobles to Saxo and small independent bookstores like shout out to Tomes and Tales. Tomes and Tales is an amazing bookstore in Pitt Meadows, which I had the pleasure of being able to speak at before. So basically, please purchase my books. I've got Neon Lieben if you like cyberpunk. I've got the Judge of Mystic saga if you like some mythology, and I've got poetry as Usurper Kings. And again, my
Yes.
website is saphaburnell.com.
Yes, people, let's support Miss Sapha Burnell because, well, Miss Burnell is something else. The books that she is producing is something else. So, Miss Burnell, Neon Liben is good for a series or a motion picture.
Oh, I'm going to go series.
Why
I
is
think
that?
that when I think of motion picture, as somebody who, again, I was a producer for a while, I look at short stories for a motion picture because I feel like 90 minutes, 90 to 120 minutes that you've got to tell a motion picture, you can break a short story down into that without having to lose a whole bunch of material along the way. But with a novel like Neon Lieben, it's so rich and dense with all of the plots and everything in it. I really think it deserves its own series. I think that the short story Cage Wire that I did is a prequel to Neon Lieben, which shout out to the Futures Lens anthology that Cage Wire appeared in. That would make a perfect film. And that is Demi and Anastasa's first night in London. And so that one would be an incredible film. It would do so well. It would have incredible visuals and just it would lend itself to that sort of 90-minute format very well. Neon Lieben, I'm holding out on a series. I would love it. I would love it to be developed into a more of a TV series, limited edition series, that kind of thing.
Yes, people, again, let's support Miss Sapha Burnell because if you support her, more books to come. More to come, people. See you soon.